spectacle ended with the cleared couple driving off in a gold Cadillac. Mosler and Powers split after a year or two of living together in Houston. She remarried in 1971, dying 5 years later as a result of an accidental overdose. Powers died in 2010 following a prosperous career as a real estate developer. Okay, so I don't know why, but I have a feeling that they both did it to get the money, so they should have both been arrested. Let's see if I can find more cases that are a little bit bigger. Maybe there is a Reddit or something. Let's see. Okay, I found a Reddit that is called R True Crime. So you can see this one. Okay. Yeah, this is a bigger one. Okay. So, of course, none of these stories are mine. So, I'm going to be giving the spotlight to the people that have posted them on our True Crime, the Reddit's True Crime forum. And this one is from Light Tiggy. In 1959, an entire family in Alberta, Canada was massacred by the family's oldest son. This is a police photo of the shoes of each of the 7 victims. The oldest victim was 53 years old, the youngest was 3. The adults were both shot, while each of the 5 children were bludgeoned to death. And it's a picture of basically all of their shoes. On June 28, 1959, police discovered a grisly scene at the Cook family home in Stettler, Alberta. They found Raymond Cook, 53, his wife, 37-year-old Daisy Cook, and their 5 children, Gerald, 9, Patrick William, 8, Christopher Fred, 7, Kathy, 5, and Linda May, 3, dead. The family had been massacred 3 days earlier. The adults had been shot with a double-barreled shotgun. The children had been bludgeoned to death with the rifle butt. The bodies were found in the grease pit of their garage. The victims were in their nightwear, and blood was found on the mattresses, indicating that the massacre happened as the family was sleeping. On June 27, Raymond Cook's son from his first marriage, Robert Raymond Cook, had been arrested in Stettler and charged with obtaining goods under false pretenses. Robert had traded the family's 1958 Chevrolet station wagon for a 59 Impala convertible. Inside the truck, the police found birth certificates, insurance policies, Raymond's marriage certificate, and the report cards of the children. Robert also had a suitcase with 4 sets of children's pajamas, new bed sheets, and a photo album with pictures of his mother. When the officers asked Robert where his parents were, he repeatedly changed his story. At one point, he claimed his father gave him $41,000 and that the family moved to British Columbia. However, Raymond's best friend said he knew nothing of this plan. The earlier charges against Robert were dismissed. Officials now accuse him of massacring his entire family. At the time, murder was a capital offense in Canada, so Robert was only charged with killing his father. was found hiding in a pig farm near Bashaw, Alberta. Robert claimed that he only escaped to visit the graves of his family. The Old Red Deer Courthouse, the site of Robert's first murder trial. Robert maintained his innocence. In December 1959, he was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death. He won a retrial on appeal but was found guilty once more in June 1960. Under normal circumstances, Robert still wouldn't have been executed. By 1960, the vast majority of convicted murderers in Canada would expect a reprieve. Under Prime Minister John Diefenbaker, whose tenure lasted from 1957 to 1963, all convicted murderers who had received a recommendation for mercy were reprieved. However, Robert hadn't received a recommendation for mercy. As uncommon as his executions had become, they were still taking place. A mass murderer, especially someone who brutally killed multiple children, did not find much sympathy. Officials surveyed the locals on Robert's fate. Most thought he was guilty and deserved to die. Clemency letters to the Solicitor General and Prime Minister went unanswered. On November 14, Cook's lawyer received a telegram from the Governor General. The telegram: Robert, 23, was executed by hanging at the Fort Saskatchewan Provincial Gaol in Alberta just after midnight on November 15, 1960. The execution went forward without any complications. Robert was pronounced dead at 12:19 a.m. He was the last person to be executed in the province of Alberta. While on death row, he agreed to posthumously donate himself for medical study. His eyes went to the Edmond Eye Bank. His body went to the University of Alberta Hospital. Robert wrote a poem proclaiming his innocence before his execution. Robert's former lawyer, David McNaughton, is still alive. He gave a public talk about the case in 2019. McNaughton said the evidence against Robert was circumstantial. He recalled that the young man seemed genuinely horrified when he was told about the massacre. However, McNaughton conceded that Robert might have suppressed the memory. An article about McNaughton. A retired teacher, Malcolm Fisher, said he's convinced of Robert's guilt but believes he was mentally unstable and shouldn't have been hanged regardless. Fisher was 9 years old when the massacre happened and has been fascinated about the case ever since. Months earlier, Robert was hit in the head with a lead pipe by a fellow inmate while serving time for breaking and entering and car theft. After this incident, Robert's behavior became more erratic and he was much more quick-tempered. Fisher said Robert, who had been in and out of prison for most of his life, was known to be a very good liar. When asked where his parents were, his history kept changing. He said Robert's history kept changing with what he thought the police knew. Nothing in his history, when police checked on it, could be confirmed. He was a charmer and a conscienceless liar who changed his version of things to suit whatever new came. And then there's photos of 3 of the Cook boys, but I can't see it because the guy probably deleted it. It was probably very hard to find evidence in 1959, but the more people are convinced that you have motive of killing an entire family, especially if it's for money, and you change your car to a better car just after the murderer, it's all too suspicious, especially if you keep lying about the facts and about the family. So, in my opinion, death row shouldn't be a thing, but at the time, unfortunately, it was. But he should have been in prison for life. Let's check another one. check something else. Oh, the screen is really bright. So, I'm going to check some serial killer histories and hopefully I find a really, really big article. I'm trying to find one that is really interesting. Okay. So I have found this one that I have always been curious about, which is the Black Dahlia, the 1947 murder of a 22-year-old Hollywood hopeful in Los Angeles that has never been solved. So let's read this one and let's read a couple more. On the morning of January 15th, 1947, a mother taking her child for a walk in a Los Angeles neighborhood stumbled upon a gruesome sight: the body of a young naked woman sliced clean in half at the waist. The body was just a few feet from the sidewalk and posed in such a way that the mother reportedly thought it was a mannequin at first glance. Despite the extensive mutilation and cuts on the body, there wasn't a drop of blood at the scene, indicating that the young woman had been killed elsewhere. The ensuing investigation was led by the LA Police Department. The FBI was asked to help and it quickly identified the body, just 56 minutes, in fact, after getting blurred fingerprints via sound photo, a primitive fax machine used by news services from Los Angeles. The young woman turned out to be a 22-year-old Hollywood hopeful named Elizabeth Short, later dubbed the Black Dahlia by the press for her rumored penchant for sheer black clothes and for the Blue Dahlia movie out at the time. Short's prints actually appeared twice in the FBI's massive collection. More than 100 million were on file at the time. First, she had applied for a job as a clerk at the commissary of Army's Camp Coke in California in January 1943. Second, she had been arrested by the Santa Barbara police for underage drinking 7 months later. The Bureau also had her mugshot in its files and provided it to the press. In support of LA police, the FBI ran record checks on potential suspects and conducted interviews across the nation. Based on early suspicions that the murderer may have had skills in dissection because the body was so cleanly cut, agents were also asked to check out a group of students at the University of Southern California Medical School. And in a tantalizing potential break in the case, the Bureau searched for a match to fingerprints found on an anonymous letter that may have been sent to authorities by the killer, but the prints weren't in FBI's files. Who killed the Black Dahlia and why? It's a mystery. The murderer has never been found, and given how much time has passed, probably never will be. The legend grows. Yeah, it's very unfortunate that they never actually found the Black Dahlia killer. It was 1947, so people would get away with murder really easily at the time. this website, but none of them are like super duper interesting to talk about. I'm gonna go back to Reddit. Okay, I found one here on Reddit, and it's from Front Ambition 4891. The tragic murder of Deanna Moran. I learned about this case on the show Deadly Women, Season 7, Episode 17, and it's been stuck in my mind ever since, so I wanted to do a write-up on it. Background: 17-year-old Katrina Sarkisian had everything a teenage girl could wish for. She was blessed with both beauty and money. Katrina lived in a wealthy Los Angeles neighborhood with her mother, Angelique Bernstein, and her younger half-sister, 15-year-old Sabrina Bernstein. By all accounts, Angelique spoiled her daughters rotten and overindulged them with all the luxuries money can buy. Growing up, Katrina was a fairly normal child, but by the 8th grade, things started to take a turn for the worse. She became increasingly angry, started missing class, and having confrontational episodes with other students. She also began abusing drugs and alcohol. Shortly after withdrawing from Harvard Westlake, the most prestigious school in the city, Katrina was sent to a therapeutic residential facility in Utah, where she was involved in more altercations with girls and attempted to run away. Her mother decided to bring her back home for good, despite the school's recommended stay of 9 months to a year. After a therapist recommended that Katrina attended Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, her mother responded that she would not allow her daughter to associate with low life. Eventually, Katrina dropped out of high school at the age of 16. While being homeschooled by Angelique, she would sleep all day and party all night. She was put on antidepressants for a sleep disorder, when in all likelihood, she was just wanted to go to clubs and parties every night. She had also recently begun sneaking out of the house and engaging in indiscriminate sexual activity. Katrina had even assaulted her own mother on multiple occasions in the family home. It seems that Katrina was a textbook case of a child who needed parental guidance, but was instead allowed to do whatever she wanted. On the other side of town, 15-year-old Deanna Moran was the antithesis of Katrina. She was a student at Santa Monica High, where she excelled academically and had many friends. Deanna was extraordinarily gifted at writing. She was also a great athlete and played on the school's volleyball, track, and water polo teams. Deanna came from a loving family. Both her parents were hardworking immigrants. Her friends call her Daring Diana because she was known to always stand up for what is right, which sadly may have been her downfall. Events of November 17, 2001. On November 17, 2001, high schoolers from all over town arrived at a party in Westwood. No parents were home. Approximately 40 high school-aged kids flooded the house and yard, drinking alcohol and smoking dope with no adult supervision. What could possibly go wrong? Deanna Moran hopped off a bus with a couple of her male friends. Sabrina Bernstein also arrived at the party with her friends. Deanna soon noticed Sabrina chasing a boy through the yard and breaking potted plants. This didn't sit well with Diana. She confronted Sabrina about it and told her to chill out and stop breaking stuff. The two girls got into a brief shoving match, leaving Sabrina on the ground and in tears. Humiliated, Sabrina went to a corner for several minutes until onlookers began chanting for the two girls to fight. Katrina quickly punched Diana in the chest, and the sisters ran back to Katrina's car and drove off. Diana stumbled and leaned against a tree, staring off into space and gasping for air. Once the terrified teen's witnesses realized Diana was bleeding, they didn't call 911. Instead, they panicked and drove her to Santa Monica Hospital, where she was pronounced dead. None of the witnesses ever saw a knife during the confrontation. How was this possible? Authorities later determined that Katrina had stabbed Diana through the heart with a T-shaped punch knife, a knife that's purpose is to be concealed in someone's hand. The next day, at around 2 p.m., Katrina Sarkeesian and Sabrina Bernstein were picked up from their home by two detectives from the LAPD. During their interrogation, Katrina's speech began to slur, and she told the detectives that she felt sleepy. It didn't take long before Katrina suddenly collapsed and stopped breathing. Little did the detectives know that Katrina wasn't just evading their questions, she was committing suicide. One can only imagine this young girl sitting in her room, feeling so tormented by whatever occurred at that party in her mind that she decides to down an entire bottle of pills. Consumed with guilt, Katrina had taken 43 of her prescribed antidepressant pills that morning. Half that dose is lethal, and just like her victim Diana, no one could save Katrina. Within a span of not even 24 hours, two sets of parents have lost their daughters. It's truly unimaginable. Nobody could imagine that what started out as a typical Saturday night would end up with two girls dead. All the warning signs were there, yet Katrina's rage was never dealt with, and it ended in an unspeakable tragedy. Damn. I feel very unfortunate for those two girls. Let's see. This one was written by Arnaldo Ryan, 96. The brutal case of Daniel Zamudio. Daniel Zamudio was born in Chile on August 3rd, 1987. The second child of a family of four, he came out as a gay at 17. A regular guy into parties and Britney Spears and who dreamed on becoming a father one day, who lived with his mom and grandma. He worked on a clothing store hoping to finish studying, save some money, and studying modeling. He was last seen by his mom on March 2nd, 2012, although it would be confirmed later that he went to work on his usual schedule from 14 to 19. His last whereabouts were at a local cyber cafe on which he stayed until 22. At the early mornings of March 3rd, 2012, he was found by a local security guard of San Borja Park in a catastrophic state. Without any identification, he was sent to a nearby hospital urgently. Among his wounds were severe TBI, open fracture of the left tibia and fibula, aspiration, pneumonia, regressing rhabdomyolysis, multiple blunt and sharp trauma to the facial area, chest, back, and limbs, cigarette burns on the body, and swastika-shaped cuts on the chest and back were other characteristics of the sad and discouraging condition of the young man who had to be placed in an induced coma. The attackers were Alejandro Axel Angulo Tapia, 26, Patricio Ivan Jahumada Caray, 25, Raúl Alfonso López Fuentes, 25, Fabian Alexis Mora Mora, 19. Raúl López claimed he kicked him a few times on his head and legs while mentioning the sexual orientation of the victim. He continued describing how the victim was profoundly bleeding and unconscious, which made Alejandro broke a bottle on Daniel's head, and then Patricio Ahumada come with the neck of the bottle to mark Daniel's body with the swastika. Alejandro then took a heavy stone and threw it a couple of his stomach, then on his head until Fabian took the lead and threw it on Daniel's legs until, according to them, his legs cracked as if were chicken bones. Afterwards, they left the scene. It wouldn't be until 2 a.m. of Sunday that Daniel's identity would be known and the family would be informed. Sadly, the news weren't encouraging. If he survived, he would suffer from brain damage. Finally, Daniel, after nearly a month of struggle and pain, died on March 27th. These people didn't feel ashamed of what they did. Angolo's sister recalled how he boasted about beating a faggot and breaking his legs. In fact, Angolo carried her sister's purse at the time of the attacks, which had traces of blood that would be confirmed to be of Daniel. Of all the perpetrators, only Fabian didn't have a criminal record. Angolo had been detained twice for robbery, Lopez for violent attacks, unspecified as far as I know, but the worst was Ahumada. 9 detentions since 16 when he was caught with a baseball bat modified with nails. From then on, robberies, violence with knives, and threats would increase his record. In fact, he had been in jail for 5 years for a brutal robbery with violence. Ahumada and his conviction reduced things to apparent good behavior. A week before the crime, he had been given the benefit of going out the weekends. During the investigations, it would reveal that 2 psychological tests advised against his release. According to them, Daniel had been sleeping in the park until the group woke him up. He talked with Lopez, confiding his fears about being beaten up by neo-Nazis who hated him for his sexuality. The group left him for a while when they went to buy rum. After seeing Daniel asleep, Alejandro came and started the beating. He even peed on Daniel while they drank and laughed about their actions. Ahumada received a life sentence, Angolo received 15 years, Lopez 15 years, and Mora 7 years, which he completed in 2016. After all these years, Ahumada remains the most violent of the group, despite finishing some studies. Mora was the only one that was released. A few years later, he was interviewed on TVN, where he didn't feel remorse by his actions. For some bizarre reasons, the show decided to confront Daniel's father with the killer just for him to claim that he's not sure about what really happened and that he left as soon as the brutal violence started, contradicting his statement during the trial, even claiming, "The truth is, I punched his son, but it was because he groped me." To further add, "I went to jail unjustly. I only punched him. That was my crime. I didn't do anything else. They went. They told me. I didn't see anything that those 3 did to him." West Yorkshire in the UK and made famous recently as a setting for BAFTA, winning BBC drama series Happy Valley. Lindsay was described by her mother, Jerry, as a well-behaved, conscientious and happy kid, a girl so well-organized and efficient that her family nicknamed her Sappy, after the character in British sitcom Absolutely Fabulous, who displayed the same traits. She was a conspicuous and popular student in Year 9 at the local Calder High School, and had expressed an interest in going to university to attain a degree once her high school education was completed. Lindsay had recently taken on a part-time job at a local Four Boys news agents delivering newspapers to earn some money, at least in part to fund what her mum described as a developing interest in fashion. Lindsay's home life had not always been easy though. The family-run pub in Rotherham and gone bust, and subsequently, under the stain of the resultant financial problems, her parents had separated. Following this, Lindsay, her brother Daniel, and father Colin lived separately from the rest of the family in caravans at Lower Roughhead Farm, Hebden Bridge. For 2 years, Lindsay and Daniel shared one caravan and Colin lived in another at the farm. Whilst Daniel apparently quite enjoyed the country lifestyle and sometimes returned to help the farmer, he was sheep dipping the day before Lindsay's disappearance. Lindsay appears to have been less keen on it and missed her friends. However, her parents eventually reconciled and the whole family was once again living together again by the time Lindsay disappeared in November 1994. Lindsay goes missing. On the evening of 7th November 1994, Lindsay was at home with Colin. Her sister Kate was 20 at the time and had already left home. Presumably, although it is not clear from information in the public domain, Daniel and Juliet, only a toddler at the time, were also at home on this evening. At approximately 10 p.m., Lindsay left the house on Cambridge Street to go to a shop and buy a packet of cornflakes while her father Colin was having a conversation on the telephone, which commenced at 9:45 p.m., and so no words passed between them. On the way to the shop, Lindsay visited the Trades Club in Home Street, where her mum Jerry was out having a drink with a friend. Jerry offered to buy Lindsay a Coke, but Lindsay refused and left to continue her journey to the shop. CCTV at the SPAR supermarket on Crown Street captures Lindsay buying a packet of cornflakes at 10:22 p.m. This is the last footage of Lindsay alive, and she appears to be acting completely normally with no hint of any concerns, nor is she carrying anything such as a bag other than the packet of cornflakes she had set out to buy. Lindsay never made it home, although this fact went unnoticed till the morning of the 8th November, as Jerry had been out for the evening and, in her own words, made the mistake of my life by not checking Lindsay had returned when she got home. Colin had been on the telephone from 9:45, 10:20 p.m. and had also not been aware of his daughter's failure to return. On the morning of 8th November, Four Boys news agents called the Reamer home, as Lindsay had failed to turn up for her morning newspaper delivery round, and it was at this point that the alarm was raised. Search and discovery. Despite family and friends strongly arguing that Lindsay was not the type of girl who would leave home, police initially believed it was likely that she was a runaway, speculating that she was unhappy at home. This was denied by her family. Despite this initial belief, there was an investigation unit set up and extensive appeals and searches took place. Lindsay's older sister Kate played the role of her sister in a televised reconstruction of Lindsay's last known movements in the hope this would jog memories, but the police received little useful information as a result. Hundreds of local people joined searches of the area, and some parts of the Rochdale Canal and River Calder were also searched, but to no avail. Lindsay's family participated in a Channel 4 documentary called Deadline in the hope this would help generate information about their daughter's whereabouts. However, the documentary caused more problems for the family. When the demeanor of Colin was questioned, he was observed by some viewers to be smirking and too happy-jolly given the situation, and some started to suspect he was in some way involved with his daughter's disappearance. His wife Jerry supported him unequivocally and outlined how behind closed doors Colin was an emotional wreck, but his way of coping with the events was to put on a brave face and happy demeanor in public, as well as his observed smirking being a result of nerves at being in front of the camera. The police do not believe Colin was involved in his daughter's disappearance. Lindsay is found. In the late morning of the 12th April 1995, 5 months after Lindsay went missing, her body was found by canal workers dredging Rotten Mill Lock, 12 of the Rochdale Canal, approximately 1 mile from the center of Epping Bridge. Police admitted that the section of canal where the remains were found had not been part of the earlier searches of the canal, a crucial mistake made as the police had failed to search upstream from Lindsay's home, and one which would cost the investigation a heavy price. Lindsay's body had been weighted down with a 20 lb concrete boulder, the boulder having been taken from the side of the canal by the killer. It appears from a FOI request submitted to West Yorkshire Police in 2021 that the boulder was secured to her remain by rope, though I cannot find confirmation elsewhere that this was the case. Where the rope came from, if this was so, is unclear. Perhaps the killer brought it with them, suggesting some form of premeditation, or perhaps this was also found by the killer close to the canal. Lindsay was still wearing the same clothing she was pictured wearing in the CCTV footage taken at the CPAR on the night she disappeared. Lindsay's remains were taken to the Royal Halifax Infirmary for post-mortem by Home Office pathologist Professor Mike Green, assisted by Dr. Naomi Carter. The pathologist concluded that Lindsay had died as a result of strangulation, with the larynx slightly flattened against the spinal column and a prominent band of congestion across the middle area of the neck muscles. Halifax Royal article from 2000 quoted on HepWeb. Much of the content of the report has been kept confidential for investigative reasons, including information of the arrangement of Lindsay's clothing when she was found, but the police did advise that no sexual assault was believed to have taken place. The investigation. Detectives believed that Lindsay was murdered the night she disappeared and that she had already been placed in the canal by the time she was reported missing on the morning of 8 November 1994. The part of the canal where her remains were found is situated fairly close to the Rimmer family home, and so the police believed it's likely that Lindsay was picked up by someone in a car on her walk home from the SPAR shop. Probably someone she knew, given that she was believed to be a sensible and cautious girl who was unlikely to get into a car with a stranger. Police speculated that whilst it was likely she knew her killer, Lindsay could have met him as recently as a few nights before her death at a bonfire night celebration in the town on the 5th of November. Close to the area of the canal where her remains were discovered was a working meal factory, now long since closed and demolished, where detectives theorized the killer, sexually attracted to Lindsay, had taken her with the aim of some sort of lesion, and when rejected, he killed her, possibly by mistake. In the 3 decades since Lindsay's murder, police have spoken to over 5,000 people, taken hundreds of witnesses' statements, and examined over 12,000 vehicles. Lindsay's murder was investigated as part of Operation Enigma, a national inquiry that reviewed the unsolved murders of 207 women across Britain, which eliminated any link between Lindsay's murder and others. In 2016, police confirmed that a DNA profile believed to be that of Lindsay's killer had been isolated by a team of Canadian forensic specialists. 2 arrests were made in 2016 and 2017, but neither man outsiders over the years, and I have summarized the main theories below. Honda Man. Police discovered a red Honda Civic stolen in Meanwood near Leeds on 6th November. Had been spotted several times in Hebert Bridge, near where Lindsay had last been seen, and was again seen in town during the evening of 12th of November. An e-fit was produced of the driver described as a bearded male, and police attempted to trace both him and the vehicle. They discovered Honda Man had tried to talk to a number of teenage girls in the town around the time of Lindsay's disappearance, including some of Lindsay's school friends. He was spotted near the SPAR shop where Lindsay was last seen alive. The car was found abandoned in Sheffield 10 days after Lindsay's disappearance. Recent appeals in 2024 have focused on possible links between the murder and the red Honda, suggesting that police think the man in the car may have had a role to play in Lindsay's death. John Taylor. Taylor was convicted of the murder of Leeds schoolgirl Leanne Tiernan following her murder in November 2000 and a series of rapes. He is also a suspect in a number of other murders in the West Yorkshire area. Police have investigated him in Leeds' case, but no evidence has linked him to her murder. John Oswin. Oswin from Halifax in West Yorkshire was given an indefinite life sentence after the pled guilty to 2 rapes and 2 incident assaults involving teenage girls in the Halifax area from December 1993 to September 1997. At least one incident occurred along a Canal 2 path. A commonality with Lindsay's case and Hebburn Bridge is only 9 miles from Halifax. Again, police investigated but could not link him to Lindsay's case. Tony King. In 23, the press reported that police were investigating the so-called Costa Killer and Holloway Strangler and had sought this DNA in Lindsay's case. However, police described this as a speculation. Jimmy Savile. One of the more outlandish theories about Lindsay's murder is that it was committed by notorious celebrity sex offender Savile. The suggestion comes about as a result of Savile apparently regularly staying at a friend's caravan situated at Craigvale, a mile from Lower Row Head farm where Lindsay lived with her father and brother for 2 years, and Savile renting a garage in the town to park his Rolls Royce. In the month Lindsay went missing, Savile's whereabouts are unconfirmed, and he was absent from the police eye, adding to the speculation of a link. However, the link seems tenuous at best. Francisco Ars Montes. In 2007, true crime author Wensley Clarkson claimed in his book The Predator, Portrait of a Serial Killer, that Montes, killer of 13-year-old British schoolgirl Caroline Dickinson, murdered while she slept in a hostel in France, was responsible for Lindsay's murder. Clarkson claimed that he was told by a retired police officer that Montes, working as a waiter in London in 1994, had visited York and was on a hunting trip in the West Yorkshire area on the date of Lindsay's disappearance. However, Clarkson has never been able to provide any evidence to back up the claims and refuses to name the officer he says gave him this information. Vince Robson. In 2017, a retired detective from Cleveland Police claimed that Vince Robson, a man questioned in relation to the murder of Julie Hogg and Tina Bell, had links to the Rimmer family and the Hebburn Bridge area. Robson moved to Hebburn Bridge in 1990 and worked at the Trades Club, the place Lindsay visited to see her mum, Jerry, on her way to SPAR shop. Robson is purportedly one of the last people to see Lindsay alive on the night she disappeared, and the detective concerned believes he should be a prime suspect. These claims were explored further in Channel 4 documentary In the Footsteps of Killers. Thanks for reading. Oh, she put in some pictures and everything. Yeah. or she also put a further observation I wanted to make about this case. I'm curious as to where the police have obtained a DNA sample from in this case, one that they appear confident is the killer's. Detective Superintendent Atkinson refused to answer this question when asked at a recent appeal for investigation reasons, understandably. My thoughts on where it could possibly have come from and what that might mean. Vaginal anal swabs elsewhere on the remains, whatever attached the boulder to the body, the Honda. Yeah, but they said that she probably didn't have anything related to sexual assault, so they probably didn't see any part of her body that is near that area she talked about, or they talked about, sorry. But yeah, this was a very interesting case, and I'm very sad that they haven't found the killer yet, because he can probably be still out there committing crimes, and he just like escaped, or it was a one-time thing, but he's hiding it for the rest of his life. But yeah, hopefully they can have new updates, since the last updates were in 2024, and they even made a series about it and everything. Hello! Someone said hi in the chat, but I didn't see it because I usually turn it off to concentrate on reading. But hi, Adrian. Thank you so much for coming to the stream, and if you didn't and you are now on YouTube watching this video, thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to leave a comment and like and subscribe.